Coming up on the AFN Europe Report.
An incredible story of survival. We'll meet a woman who was in the World Trade Center when the attacks happened 10 years ago.
And it hasn't been an easy time.
And patriotism around the world. A German flag maker helps America start the healing process. We'll explain.
So much support from the U.S.
Plus, a soldier with a 23-year break in service puts the uniform back on because of 9/11.
But I knew I wanted to do something.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for the AFN Europe Report. I'm Sergeant Tim Chatlis. As the weekend is upon us, so is the 10th anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the United States. In tonight's cast, we're going to show you stories of survival, patriotism, and how those horrible events affected our service members and families here in Europe. First up tonight, AFN correspondent Anna Allen takes us to the country of Moldova. An American by the name of Nancy Ryder lives there. 10 years ago, she was in one of the towers in New York, when her life changed forever.
Hi, I'm Nancy Ryder. I'm a military brat. I'm a Foreign Service Officer for USAID, and I'm a 9/11 survivor.
Where were you when the world stopped turning on that September day?
The conference was at the Marriott World Trade Center, an economics conference. I was actually staying at the Marriott World Trade Center as well. We were really honestly having a fantastic time and even talking about what it might be like to move there. Greg, he was just kind of hanging out by the window, typing on his computer when it happened.
Did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against that blue sky?
It was just this really amazingly loud, reverberating rumble. And right as we went out the back is when the second plane hit. My instinct was, let's just get away from it. Then, after the collapse, a big wave of dust and smoke and everything started rolling down. I remember having two thoughts in that moment. The first thought was, I can't die yet because I haven't lived. And then the other thought was, if I die right now, none of what I have done has mattered to anybody. We had come to an intersection covered in just glass. We have no shoes and we're in New York City. There was a lady there. For some reason, she had her friend's shoes. She was, I guess, one of the people on the street. I don't know if she was one of the people who stopped to kind of look up and see what was happening or what happened, but she was with her friend one minute and the next minute she'd been hit. She handed me the shoes, and I remember looking at them and thinking, you know, it was kind of ironic because they're high-heeled evening shoes. And I remember just putting the shoes on, and they fit. And it sounds like such a cliche and such a ridiculous thing, but the fact that these shoes that this woman gave me fit, this gave me an enormous sense of hope. Like I'm gonna make it out of here. I'm gonna make it, it's gonna be fine. 12 hours had gone by, kind of in a blur. We saw what had happened and we're starting to get an idea of what had been happening. They had televisions on.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
I think the first feelings of maybe survivor's guilt started to set in at that point. We ended up breaking up. I quit my job. I sold pretty much everything that I owned. I'm going to travel, but I'm not going to travel to find the perfect place. I'm going to travel to find some peace in me and figure out what do I want to do with the rest of my life. So I worked with wildlife in Africa, something that touched me profoundly. I thought, wow, I am living my dream. I could die right now, and I feel like I'm living. It was at the end of my journey. I went back to Florida, and that's when my phone rang, and we got back together. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful that I've lived another day, even when it's a bad day. I mean, it's been 10 years. After this much time, the journeys that I've taken and the growth that I've had, I can honestly say I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I lived through that. I'm glad it was very painful, but I wouldn't be here right now doing the things that I'm doing if it hadn't been for that.
Again, that was Anna Allen from AFN Naples who produced that piece. We wish the best for Nancy and her husband and thank her for sharing her story. The 9/11 attacks affected all Americans, and indeed the world. Airman First Class Shane Mitchell has our next story about a man who was in New York and witnessed the tragedy on that fateful day. He's a German who was in the States on vacation when his fun-filled holiday was cut short.
Millions of people watched the towers fall on TV, and millions of people witnessed them fall firsthand. For Reinhard Kaga, his visit to New York City was a time he'll never forget.
It started as a very, very beautiful vacation, and it ended as a historical drama.
Herr Kaga was staying on his stepbrother's boat, which gave a clear shot of the towers. As a tourist, he happened to have his camera and several rolls of film with him. While on the boat deck smoking a cigarette, the towers fell, and he could think of only one thing to do.
It was getting more and more intense, and I was staying there on the boat making pictures. And really, I don't know why I did that.
And he says from where he took them, the images didn't seem to make sense.
When you look at them, in the foreground is so quiet, and the background is such a catastrophe.
10 years went by, and his pictures were seen by very few people. But this year, Herr Kaga brought them to life in a montage entitled 1 Week in September to encourage others to remember 9/11, not just America, but the world.
It's important that we collect this global memory. We should remember what happened, we should talk about why this happened.
And learn from it. From Saarbrücken, Germany, I'm Airman First Class Shane Mitchell.
The September 11 attacks took the lives of thousands. The events galvanized the patriotism of the American people, but the tragedy reached well beyond the American shores, as we find out in this report from AFN's Lance Milstead.
If you've ever gloried in its sight, then you know our flag is more than a simple banner. Its folds are a source of pride. It unifies, it inspires.
Right after the attacks, flags started going up all over the place. It was so hard.
I did know that President Bush had asked all to fly American flags.
But there were no flags for purchase anywhere. I tried 8 or 10 of the major retailers.
As you know, since September 11th, we have not been able to purchase a flag anywhere around here.
I got to know Catherine about 30 years ago when I went at the University of Wisconsin in Madison for studying.
Catherine Amiot and her husband Harry live in New York, and they remain close friends with Manfred Kronenberg. Catherine, an American without a flag. Manfred, a German and owner of a flag company.
President Bush then had asked, after 9/11, all Americans to hang a flag. And we realized very quickly that we didn't have a flag to hang.
She asked me if I could send her some flags for her and her closer family. I said it would be no problem at all.
To be able to hang a flag, immediately showed our solidarity, our love for our country.
And then I thought about, okay, if there's a problem for them to get flags because they had been sold out everywhere in the States, then I would add some more. And so I said, okay, I will send her 100 flags.
Your gift was so important to us here in New York. My husband lost so many dear friends and coworkers in one World Trade Center.
I wanted a flag to show my neighbor, whose brother was a fireman killed on that day, that we will not forget his brother.
It made me really feel proud on this, to help them in that situation, especially if you look back in history, Second World War, we got so much support from the US with these care packages. And this was a very, very small symbol and sign from my own person for giving something back.
people were really excited, and all I asked in return was that we just said, write a letter, tell Manfred and Sylvia how you were affected by the, great tragedy of 9/11 and where your flag is now.
The letters poured in, expressions of gratitude and stories of loss, and how 100 flags served to restore hope in a country's heart.
Thank you. The flag you sent to us from your factory is beautiful.
We're truly most grateful for you sharing yourselves with us through your flags.
A flag is a very easy symbol for showing the solidarity with somebody. So flag is a very old symbol for showing emotions, to express emotions.
It really stirs up emotions even today, because it was an amazing time in the U.S. While it was the saddest time, of course, of my lifetime, when the U.S. just saw how much love there was pouring in from the other countries, in Germany, obviously, as well. I just think it was tremendously heartening.
And somehow such a horrible tragedy begets strength and resolve. And a show of solidarity by friends across the sea was a seed of resiliency for Americans. Lance Milstead, Stuttgart, Germany.
This is usually where we cut to a commercial break, but tonight we're going to hear from a few people stationed in various places around Europe and see what the 9/11 attacks meant to them.
The shock of that day for me was that someone actually came to America and harmed that many people.
To be told you're not allowed to go into work, don't wear your uniform for a few days, was very devastating, especially at a time frame when we felt more of a need to be American and to show who we were across the board.
That day was obviously the most horrible day for America in my lifetime.
Being an immigrant to the United States and being a proud American, a naturalized citizen, I was angry and I was saddened at the fact that somebody would try to destroy and try to change a place, an idea that has been the beacon to so many immigrants around the world.
As soon as I could, I definitely volunteered to get deployed. My wife is also in the Army, so we both volunteered at the same time to go.
Finally tonight, a man who joined the Army twice, once because of tradition, the other because of 9/11.
I enlisted in the Army in November 19th of 1980. It's pretty much a family tradition.
After serving just 3 years, Sergeant Christopher Grooms took a long break in service, 23 years to be exact.
I left the Army and went to work for the federal government, the Department of Energy.
As with most people who separate from the service, Grooms gave himself a break from the physical training.
I just got caught up in making a living and doing my job, and that just got put on the back burner.
Grooms grew to well over 300 pounds and had a 48-inch waist. After leaving the Department of Energy some years later, Grooms decided to teach middle and high school students. After watching a news report on the September 11th attacks with his class, he had a feeling maybe his country wasn't done with him.
My health was really bad. I had all kinds of physical ailments, but I knew I wanted to do something.
That something was dropping nearly 100 pounds and getting back within military standards. In 2006, Grooms enlisted in the Georgia National Guard. It didn't take him long to realize that part-time wasn't enough. By the end of that year, he had rejoined the active Army with no plans of separating again.
As far as I was concerned, it was the rest of my life.
In Heidelberg, Army Sergeant Lucas Hoskins, AFN News.
If you missed a story on tonight's newscast, you can always log on to our website at afneurope.net. And while you're there, please be sure to stop by our Facebook and Twitter pages. Concerning the 9/11 stories you just saw this evening, check them out and share them at our Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/AFNEurope. And remember that AFN Europe is all one word. That's all the time we have for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for watching and have a safe and enjoyable weekend.